again with me, Risa at the Risa's News. Now, let's talk about the Indian Army, which is saying 20 of these soldiers have been killed by Chinese troops in the disputed Kashmir region. This is the first deadly on the border in 45 years. Initially, the Indian Army said 3 soldiers had died and others were wounded.
But now we have this update statement saying 17 troops were critically injured at the Sanjeev location and who were exposed to sub-zero temperatures in the high altitude terrain have succumbed to their injuries, and so the death toll is now 20.
China, for its part, is accusing India of the border and attacking the personnel. Well, let's have a look at the border inequation.
This is the Gorin River Valley area. Both sides have been deploying thousands of troops on either side in recent weeks. Angry protesters gathering in the city of Ahmedabad demanding revenge and calling for a boycott of Chinese goods. Let's make India self-reliant and give China a fitting reply. Beijing says it defending its territorial integrity learned, and shockingly on June 15, Indian troops seriously violated the bilateral concessions and crossed the border line twice, engaging in illegal activities and provoking and attacking Chinese personnel, resulting in serious physical confrontation, border force, and two sides.
Well, I speak to Shashak Joyce, the France editor of The Economic, who live with us. Thank you very much for your time. And before we get into details of the last 24 hours, also help us understand why tension have been growing in the last few weeks.
Sure. Well, this is a strategic area for India. It's right up in the far north. For China, this is on the western edge of Tibet. As you pointed out, this is the first major attack since 1975, and that's partly because they've both learned how to manage their differences. The border is absolutely enormous. It's almost entirely undefined, so patrols effectively overlap. The reason tensions have been growing in the last few weeks isn't entirely clear, but it's probably to do with the fact that India has been upgrading the infrastructure on its own side of the border in this area known as Ladakh. Over the past several years, particularly over the past year, they've completed a vital road that runs south to north. And what seems to have happened is the Chinese side has interpreted that as a challenge to the status quo and a threat to their own forces on the Chinese side, effectively to the east.
With regard to the particular circumstances in which these 20 Indian soldiers died, do you have any detail?
We have some details from Indian accounts, although how reliable they are is open to question. What appears to have happened is a few days ago, the Indian and the Chinese sides agreed to effectively defuse the crisis. They agreed to disengage from several positions. The standoff is in 3 places. The Galwan River Valley is one of them. The other 2 are Pangong Lake to the south, and the other one is called Hot Springs, which is also to the south. The Chinese side appears to have agreed to disengage from at least 2 of those, including Galwan Valley. What seems to have occurred is an Indian patrol was waiting to meet the Chinese side to discuss details of that withdrawal, of the details of that disengagement, so that both sides would move several kilometers back. We don't know exactly what transpired, but that seems to have devolved into a fight. Now, troops on both sides don't use weapons because they have various protocols and agreements to not do so over the years. But the Chinese side appears to have used stones, clubs, sticks with nails in them, according to some Indian accounts, to attack the Indian side, many of whom subsequently were critically injured, and some of whom may have fallen in some way in that punishing terrain and succumbed to frostbite or exposure overnight. Many others may have succumbed to their injuries from that conflict itself. There have also been some Chinese casualties, but we don't know how many, and we don't know if there have been any fatalities.
And as we listen to this extraordinary campaign, what is strategic context? Here we start from the national pride to this moment being played out on the international stage Why are both countries so focused on the particular border?
Well, let's remember here that India and China are not just Asia's two biggest rising powers, or two of the world's most important rising powers. They fought a war over this patch of land back in 1962, a war in which China essentially rapidly defeated India, and that has been a historical trauma for India in subsequent decades. Now, they stabilized the border in many ways. As you said, there hasn't been a shot fired since 1975. This is the worst clash since 1967. But at the same time, they have been competing for influence all over Asia. India doesn't like the fact that China is allied very closely to Pakistan, that the Chinese Navy is increasingly busy in the Indian Ocean. And of course, China doesn't like the fact that India and India's successive Indian governments have moved ever closer to the United States, China's rival. And so the geopolitical context effectively compounds the local tensions at the border itself, making for a very volatile mix.
Well, I will close the recess news today and see you.